Shalom, my brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for joining us this week for this week's news review. We're going to be going over quite a few stories. So I just want to encourage you, if you're watching us on YouTube, please take a time to share the link. Those of you watching on Facebook are obviously watching on our page. So welcome. We thank you for joining us. Definitely thank you, Alan. Thank you for sharing the links. For those of you that are new to this, we do this. Hey, look at that. I got Alan and Sharon. We do this every week. So you'll see on our channel, if you're on YouTube or even on our Facebook page, either one, you're going to see that we take the time each week to go over a few critical stories, things that are pertinent to the remnant. We don't have, there's so much that's happening in our world at the same time that it is difficult to keep up. And one of the things that I heard consistently over the last several years when I'd ask people about different stories or different things going on, and have you heard this and have you heard that? And what I would hear from people was, oh, I checked out of the news and I don't listen to any of this and I don't pay any attention to these things anymore. And while I understand that sentiment, and frankly, there's a large part of me that agrees with that sentiment, because honestly, it can be overwhelming to, be bombarded, especially when it's not positive news, right? So, I don't blame anybody for that. But there are some things that we need to keep our eyes on. And so those things that I believe, as I'm moved to share, we sit and we do this each week. And so I'm very thankful for every one of you that that are participating in these meetings and sharing the links. And I saw a lot of new people in the last couple of weeks that jumped in on our news reports, and I really appreciate that. It's good discussion. It allows us to have kind of meaningful discussions about the events as they're going on, but also how it relates to our walk and what we can do in the interim. So giving people a few minutes to join us here. And again, I just want to encourage everyone to like and subscribe, and also to share with your friends these links. So it's going to be a lot we're going to cover today. And I know there's quite a few things that are of grave concern for us over these over this last week, as well as the days that are inbound. And so thank you for those of you that give me a 5x5. I appreciate that. Yes, my sister, that is a great point here. I'm going to put that on the screen. Thank you for sharing that. That's in fact, the propaganda machine is so evident as time winds down. That's right. We're watching a lot of the curtain being removed from, the man behind the curtain, and we're starting to understand how the machinations work and how we got here. That being said, we've got some dangerous days ahead of us. Let me get this a little closer. And there's going to be a lot of warfare in various levels. And many of you have picked up that we are in already and in full battle, if you will, on a multi-dimensional war. And this is what was meant in the scripture by war in the heavens. All right. So there is a war in the heavens going on right now. And it's a battle for supremacy, saints. It is a battle for sanity. How many have watched all the gaslighting and all the lying and deceiving and manipulation that has become standard and has become we've become so accustomed to it that we just that's why, again, so many people checked out. So of all the times in history for us to be paying attention, this is the time. And I do believe that there are a number of factors that are damaging multiple nations at the same time for a purpose. And this is intentional. We are watching much destruction. I want to point out that in 2013, we had a 3-day fasting and prayer time. And again, I want to encourage those of you that are doing things like that or being moved of the Ruach to fast and pray. He's going to give you insight. He gave me a vision, an open vision. And this was May 14th, 2013. So for those of you that are tuned in to dates, that's the Independence Day for Israel. And so he gave me an open vision. And in this open vision, I was able to see the future. Just a glimpse. It was only a few minutes, but it was like a movie. And I did a video on it called The Coming Civil War. And there were many things that were discussed in that, or many things that he shared with me. And one of the things he shared with me was that the cities would be, well, what we're seeing now, there's a devolution going on, and it's becoming devastating. There are certain parts of the country and the world that have been severely hit. And so this is why I encourage people to seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. Only he, by his Ruach, by his spirit, can give you the information that you're going to need to navigate the days ahead. Okay, so on that note, we're going to go ahead and jump into some of the stories that we've got to cover tonight. So again, share the link, get it on Facebook, get it on whatever you use for social media. Encourage your friends, encourage other believers in Messiah that are awake in this hour to band together and let us put aside every weight and sin that easily besets us. We are all, every single one of you, me, and all the remnant are shaking off lies left and right. And so when you meet people that sincerely love him, maybe they're in error on this or that, speak the truth in love. Make sure that you don't antagonize for no reason. Now, there's some people we can't reach, but when people are coming in looking for answers, be as accommodating as you can. Encourage them in every way that you can. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get into the news. America just passed a new $1.7 trillion omnibus bill. I'm sure you all heard about this over the last week or two. I want to cover it only to the extent that some of the things that are being highlighted and things that are, again, if you don't understand the warfare, well, take a look at this headline. The omnibus bill contains millions in wasteful spending for LGBT, perversions, border security for other countries. This is on Natural News. Shout out to Mike Adams. We love him. Doing a great job over there. Just in the nick of time, the Senate, including 18 Republicans, so much for, conservatives, right, passed the pork-laden $1.7 trillion omnibus bill before government funding ran out, and you will not believe what it contains. Another $45 billion is on its way to Ukraine, of course, because the cockroaches in Washington, D.C. have to keep their biolaboratories and child trafficking operations. You got to love Mike Adams. This brings the yearly total of Ukraine disbursements to $111 billion. That's crazy, but here's our world. This is what we're looking at. And our people, of course, they love the Ukrainian president because, obviously, if you're familiar with his past, you know why he's there. And so they're putting all this money into these other places. And one of the things that I find, and I think a lot of people, especially if you're a veteran, if you stood your long watch, if you're a veteran like I am, I'm a Navy veteran, I'm a shellback. Okay. I took that seriously as a young man, going through that process and being part of the military and defending your country. That's what you believed. You believed you were defending your country. This is the biggest slap in the face you could ever give to people that gave their lives or dedicated their time. As a lot of veterans are very unhappy about what they're seeing here. And so if you're a veteran out there and you're getting a little stoked, I don't blame you. Because the whole point of having a nation is to protect its borders, to preserve it. And so to be spending billions of dollars to secure, other countries' borders and forget your own is a travesty. This is, this is akin to taking care of other people's families while your family suffers or family starves. And we just don't need to talk about that much. We all know that that's instinctively wrong, and there's something devious going on there. And so continue to pray for more light in this area, because I believe that that's what it's going to take. And I also believe it's going to take some radical action to turn this nation around. And so we are standing in faith for some radical things that we believe are going to be coming in the near term. We pointed some things out concerning this particular week, actually, and we're going to be watching this. A couple of broadcasts back, we talked about the Supreme Court case, the uh, uh, Brunson case, and that now this week is coming up. So something for us to keep an eye on and pay attention to, because I believe it is a critical case that is going before the Supreme Court, with the possibility of being earth shattering. If in fact the Supreme Court listens to the petition of now tens of thousands, I understand it, have handwritten letters that they have sent to the Supreme Court in support of the case. So that's going to be an interesting thing for us to watch this coming week. All right, so stay tuned for that. Next week we'll talk more about, we'll talk about the developments, and we'll be catching you up on developments in a couple of different key legal battles in the next broadcast. So stay tuned for that. We also want to point out that this is something that this is part of what we are seeing now. And unfortunately, this just isn't going to go away. So right now, according to the information that we're getting out, again, thank you, Natural News, for this report. 7,500 Americans are disabled or killed each day using this bioweapon, if you will. And the USA is imploding under what is called a decivilization assault. And one of the things that I believe is happening right now is an attempt to neutralize the United States. This is basically what we're having. And again, they're pointing out something, a decivilization. That's what I saw in the vision, folks. I saw a decivilization. That's a great way to put it. Decivilization. That is a lot of people every single day. That's a lot of people. And so I'm very grateful for those that are starting to hold them to account. We are grateful for our Florida governor, DeSantis, who is, I think, convened a grand jury, as I understand it, and is pledging to hold all false advertisers accountable. And that's an interesting way to go at it, is false advertising. That's kind of an interesting angle, because it's like, it's basically catching them in their con, right? So they had essentially promoted a solution that wasn't a solution. So now there's some accountability, and I understand that the heads of these different things are running for cover. So this is going to get dicier as we go forward. It's sad, because as I believe it's 5.1 billion people that I've read have already taken at least one dose, which is about 2/3 by my math. So scripture being fulfilled right before our very eyes. All right, saints. So he promised that he would fulfill his word, and his foretelling of the last days is right on point, very accurate, right? So we can take confidence from that, because he told us these things would happen. And he told us he would bring a third part through the fire. Before I went to Israel in 2015, he put it to me that way. And I had no choice but to pray for the third that would come through it. And this was 2015, 7 years ago. And so we knew that this was coming. But unfortunately, there's nothing we could do to stop that. And even if you warned people, which many of you did, to your credit, and you got blood off your hands. By the way, I want to just share that with you. The remnant are not trying to be annoying. I know we can be. We're not trying to be. We're simply trying to wash blood off of our hands. If you knew what we know, and I know you all are with me on this, if they knew what we know, they'd be pulling their hair out too, going, hello, You've been deceived here. You've been lied to. You've been tricked. You've been scammed here. You've been conned. And got to keep exposing that, because the king is going to hold us accountable for every one of them if we don't warn them. So we have to warn. And unfortunately, I know it can be a little annoying if you want to just kind of go to sleep and put your head in the sand. But unfortunately, it's a dangerous neighborhood to just, sort of lax. And this is a dangerous time period to take matters lightly. And so, speaking of which, we're going to move into the international scene. And this has got my attention. Yes, we do. We sound very irritating. We're like a dog with a bone, and we continue on his name. I was on Facebook today, and some Edomite decided he was going to teach us, some things, and that didn't go well. Let's just put it like that. Don't listen to Edomites. Don't listen to people that are fake. Okay. And don't listen to people that, are going to try and steal from you what Elohim has already given to us. And that's what's on right now. The enemy is coming, trying to snatch the word. And if he can't snatch it, remember what Messiah said. They will travel over hill and dale. They will go over all kinds of things to make twice the proselyte of hell as themselves. They don't go in, and they will prevent others from going in. So as people are going in, they'll go, oh no, don't believe the, just to give you an example, person saying, oh, there's no way to know the answer to that. Okay. So how do you know it's wrong then? If you are admitting you don't know the answer, then you can't be correcting anybody. You get what I'm saying? These are people that are just in the way. They just get in your way. So be careful with that, especially on social media. There's a lot of them. Controlled opposition is a strategy that is used consistently. And the best way to control the opposition is to lead it. And that's why they pump a lot of money into their fakes, to their pimps, and they put them out there in front of everybody to cause controversy when there is none. When Elohim has settled the matter and they just want to bring it up again. Well, let's debate it again. We don't want to debate it again. So just understand that. That's what's going to be going on. And it's going to continue because we're coming in for a landing. Amen. All right, moving into the international scene. Some of you have been paying attention to some of this information. I want to point something out here that is going on overseas. Putin is allowing the collection of gas supplies in debts in unfriendly countries' currency. So he has broken from the ruble-only policy. This in light of the various things that are going on in the Eastern European theater of operations. Natural gas suppliers may settle with gas buyers from unfriendly countries in foreign currency if they collect the debts from gas suppliers and such buyers. So basically, they're finding ways around the sanctions. The decree specifies that settlements can be made in foreign currency using a special account and by an authorized bank on the basis of the application of the Russian supplier. So they're allowing payment for gas in other currencies. They had stopped doing that, which put a massive crimp in Europe style, if you know what I mean. And they were realizing that they had overstepped their, they gone over their skis, as I like to say. They got a little excited about punishing him and ended up punishing themselves. And so they're backing off from that because Russia is laying the smackdown on Ukraine like you've never seen before. And so, as a matter of fact, this next story from, again, Mike Adams, thank you again. Shout out to my buddy Mike Adams over there at Natural News. And NATO, U.S. in trouble as Russia expands militarily and moves hypersonic missiles near Ukraine. Okay, why is this significant? Because there's no defense of these missiles. So that is a very, very, very big deal militarily because, again, if he decides to launch these at any particular target, that target's getting hit. There's no defense against these are hypersonic missiles, and they cannot stop them. So this is bad news for the other side. This is about to heat up. And I don't know if you know this or not. Those of you that are Bible students that are truly paying attention, they are gearing up for war like you have never seen. They want a war really badly. And so this is part of their program, their effort. And this is part of the if I mentioned several weeks ago the Albert Pike prophecy. So they are trying desperately to bring this thing to pass. And that is why I'm taking a real strong look at what's happening here. And we've seen rumblings in the past, in several decades of rumblings. But this is different, folks. This has gone kinetic. You've got Russian troops on the ground. They're talking a massive level of troops in the next 90 days that will be coming into the theater of operations. So this is about to go up a notch in terms of its importance on the world scene. In addition to that, and again, this is part of the same theater of operations, so we've got to pay attention to it in relation to what the scripture tells us about Gog Magog, about conflict, Psalm 93, and things like that. So Turkey, Syria, and Russian defense ministers meet for the first talks since 2011. So again, like I said, we've watched this for years, but these are unprecedented things that are now happening. And so as Turkey, Syria, and Russia, this three nations begin to collaborate. The defense ministers of Russia, Turkey, and Syria met in Moscow on Wednesday, the first such talks since a war broke out in Syria, the Russian Defense Ministry said. And it was also the first meeting between Turkish and Syrian defense ministers since the start of the war in 2011. And Russia and Turkey are involved in Syria, with Moscow supporting the Damascus regime against its opponents, and Ankara is backing the rebels. The meeting came as Turkish President Erdogan has repeatedly threatened to launch a military offensive in northern Syria against Kurdish troops. And Russian Defense Minister Shoigu and his Turkish Syria's counterparts, Hulusi Akar and Ali Abbas, discussed ways to resolve the Syrian crisis, the problem of refugees, and joint efforts to combat extremist groups in Syria. So, there's an effort to calm this down, right? So, cool heads trying to prevail, trying to find solutions, trying to find a way. And do you think they're going to allow that? There are forces that want a war, and the scripture must be fulfilled. So war and rumor and war we're going to have. All right. And this is exactly what we expected to see, but we have to still watch it unfold. And so that's what we're doing right now. We're watching it unfold in front of us. This is a serious problem. And of course, Turkey, if you look at a map, you'll see that Turkey is directly north of Israel. So if you draw a line straight to the North Pole from Israel, you go through Turkey. So when you talk about the Gog Magog war, you really can't ignore Turkey in this whole discussion, if you will. So this becomes a very interesting thing to keep an eye on. And again, staying in the same theater of operations, take a look at this. Iran launches a massive military drill. This is by the Depka file, and threatens neighbors hosting Israeli bases. So the heat up between Iran and Israel is about to come to the forefront. The massive drill launched on Friday, December 30th. So this just started. And the sword of the first Shia Imam Ali, 1401, incorporating major elements of its armed forces, sprawls from its Pakistan border to the northern reaches of the Indian Ocean, accompanied by threats to three of Iran's regional neighbors. And so Iran continues to press, and there's more saber rattling. And again, this is part of that ancient that prophecy that they believe they need to make happen. And so we're gonna watch this with interest. And so this pops me over to my next story, which again puts us right into the theater. And we see that Benjamin Netanyahu was sworn in for his sixth term as Prime Minister of Israel. You can't make this up, folks. And he's begun his sixth term in office. Israel's 37th government was sworn in this last week amid raucous protests from opposition, Knesset members, and lots of demonstrations outside. There were a lot of people that are really not happy. So as much as they want to pretend they have like this big mandate, there's a big uproar in Israel going on right now. I believe that it is going to get worse because I believe these people have an agenda, and they're going to push their agenda. And you say, well, Peter, what makes you think? I mean, maybe he wants to come in and just, I don't know, do social programs or stuff, right? Okay, I understand that. I mean, that makes some sense. But let's take a look at what happened the first day in office. He just got in there. First Israeli airstrike in Syria under new government. Syrian TV reports that Israel launched barrages of missiles against Damascus International Airport and its environs Sunday night, killing 2 Syrian servicemen. So while they're trying to have peace talks, are you watching this? Are you getting this? Okay. They got the other nations. We just said they were trying to negotiate a peaceful settlement. They're trying to figure this out. They're trying to get to a peaceful place where they can figure out how to basically resolve the issues. And look what these guys do, right? The Syrian London-based opposition added that parts of the airport were demolished in the attack, citing targets, quote, associated with Hezbollah and pro-Iranian militias. What's that? Pro-Iranian. So again, this proxy war thing keeps happening, right? So in the southern outskirts of the capital, and Syrian air defenses are said to have missed downing any of the projectiles. So all of them got through. That means, stand by, because again, nobody likes getting shot at and don't want to shoot back. So makes me think of Braveheart. Remember Braveheart when he's like at the he's right there at the edge and he's talking to his guys and they look at him and they say, "Where are you going?" He goes, "To pick a fight." That's what this makes me think of. It's like, well, let's go pick a fight. They are picking a fight, and it's happening worldwide. And Saints, these are not small players either. These are players that are no joke. Okay. And again, this is probably the theme for the most part of this broadcast, because it's too consistently being discussed. Here we go. China and the U.S. are on a collision course for war over Taiwan. And again, as Ukraine begins to wind down, should it wind down, and again, we'll watch and see, there's much speculation that this can become the new theater of operations. We can only avoid war by preparing for a war, says Taiwan's president. And approaching the end of 2022 with a stern message for her people, Taiwan needs to strengthen our ability to defend ourselves. And, they say things like nobody wants war. I don't believe that they could really stand up to the Chinese. So I think that that's kind of a bunch of bravado at this point. I believe that they would probably fold in any conflict. But again, just to reiterate, increasingly, China makes no bones about its goals. We in mainland China believe that Taiwan is part of China, and we have to reunify with Taiwan. They are not ambiguous about what their intention is, and as far as they're concerned, it's just a fait accompli. So they're going to continue to apply pressure, and I believe that we are in a dangerous window, especially if the United States is neutralized, and it may very well be neutralized. Now, that was the word I got, and I've wondered a lot since I got that. How would that occur? And we are watching so many things that have neutralized our, international footprint, our international impact, if you will, as a nation. Our credibility as a nation couldn't be any lower. We're probably the laughing stock of most of the world at this point. And the only way that I think you could really make it worse, that Supreme Court case, if they in fact hear those arguments and rule in favor of those that have said, that they violated their oath, which is essentially the case. It's not about the election. It's about, did they perform their duties? And if they rule in favor of that, then that would neutralize the United States in a big way. And we would be looking at a whole different set of circumstances. That's a whole nother kettle of fish. All right. So very dangerous stuff that we're paying attention to. And I just again encourage you all to be in prayer and also to be aware, because should that um, happen, and sometimes there's a bit of a delayed reaction, right? And so we need to be on the very front of that so that we know how to order our affairs accordingly. And I know many of you are starting to get the message. I keep getting from more and more people notes and comments and coming to me on the side as they're departing Egypt, they're departing Babylon, they're setting up shop off grid, they're setting up shop in camps and communities, and they're starting to think like that. Good for you. And we want to encourage everybody to start thinking more community and more local based, more regional based connections there. Going forward, that's what will endure. And these traps called cities are being exposed for what they are. People are figuring it out though, and it's because of the remnants, because of people that are continuing to shine light, continue to post things, and you keep doing things like that. Good for you. Those of you that share articles, share things out there on social media and on YouTube and different things. Good for you to continue to awaken people because it's working. It's working. And people are starting to ask, hey, why are we even here? What are we doing this for? Why are we bothering? I had somebody that contacted us and they say, hey, I work from home. I can work anywhere. I think I'm going to move closer to you guys. Right. Um, they take their work with them. I think that's brilliant. And I believe that Elohim is doing that to reposition people. So, I'm not trying to scare anybody. This is not the point of these broadcasts, but it is to make you aware that there's higher and lower peril places. There's some places that are very, very dangerous to be, and highly condensed population centers are they're falling apart. I'm not going to put them on here because I don't want to glorify the violence, but I saw several shootings. We'll probably talk about that next week, but we saw several shootings where masses of people just going to an outdoor event, having to run for their lives because somebody's pop, 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 pop. And it's not just one or two shots anymore, folks. Now we're hearing like open, semi-automatic fire. And it's getting crazy, right? So I believe that's done intentionally. I believe that a lot of that is being manipulated so that, the intimidation factor comes in. But I also believe, and this is something that he spoke to me a couple of years ago, and I posted it on social media. And since I posted that word, so much has happened to confirm it. He said he would discomfit his people. So what my sister Octavia just said, he's moving troops. That's exactly correct. He's in charge of troop movement. We're not. So we are just observing. But there is some serious troop movement, if you know what I mean. He is moving his people out of harm's way. He's connecting them with their brothers and sisters. And that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. Changing gears just a little bit here, I want to share this with you guys because, again, one of the signs that he told us to pay attention to, and we're not supposed to be dismayed by what we see in the heavens, right? We're not supposed to be bothered by these things. Nevertheless, again, we're not ignorant, and so we're paying attention to what's happening. And this was recorded over Colorado, and this large sphere in the sky was recorded. And so this was kind of interesting. I thought I'd share this with you folks because it is part of what we're watching in terms of the culmination of the age, signs in the heavens, terrifying sights. And if the ancients saw this kind of thing, I mean, there'd probably be repenting in the street with sackcloth and ashes, and yet it floats right by and you narrowly hear about it, right? Because we've become desensitized. I think there's too much. There's almost an information overload going on out there, which again is why a lot of people have disconnected because they don't want to be overloaded. But this is information you kind of need to know. Look at this. So there's some signs going on in the heavens, saints, things that are perplexing signs in the heavens. How about that, huh? And of course, the link will be in the description after the end of this broadcast. And so we're paying attention to not just the socio-political stuff, but also the natural things that are happening in the earth. And I know you all, we talked about last week of um, the weather warfare things that we started to notice. And as a matter of fact, I have a friend, Mindy's really good friend in South Dakota, and went out, grabbed a snowball, and tried to melt it with a lighter, and all they did was scorch it. So this lends credence to the credit, lends credibility and credence to those that are questioning the authenticity, the natural organic, the the texture of this storm. Is it naturally organic, or was it is it a weather manipulation event? And there's a lot of good questions to be asked in that area. So again, we are being played a bit. And this is devastating, because if in fact this was manipulation, then there's some people guilty of manslaughter. So you can't have it both ways. And if they in fact modified the weather and that caused a 70-degree drop, and I'm talking, it went from 60 degrees to 10 below zero in some places. It was devastating, right? If in fact people are guilty of actually manipulating that, and then hoorah, some of our boys need to go pick them up, because that's treason. That's murderous and manslaughter, and it's wicked. That needs to be put to an end. And by the way, did any of you guys ever give anybody permission to spray? I mean, if I came over to your neighborhood and I just took a drone and started spraying over your house, wouldn't I get sued? Wouldn't you shoot the drone down? Wouldn't you? You know what I mean? Who gave the? Yeah, that's all right. This is one of the things I love about doing live, because this is why I don't do lives. I hadn't for many years. I decided to do this way, but this is why, because this is exactly what happens. All right, so let's take a look at this story. Um, National Guards going door to door, and this was last week. They were going door to door to find victims, and this is very sad to my heart. National Guard went door to door in parts of Buffalo on Wednesday to check on people who lost power during these area's deadliest winter storm in decades, and authorities face the tragic possibility of finding more victims amid melting snow. Already, more than 36 deaths have been reported in western New York from the blizzard that raged Friday and Saturday across much of the country, with Buffalo in its crosshairs. And so they continue to find more bodies, and it's very, very sad. This is very heartbreaking. And as I said, if this is in fact manipulation, if someone is guilty of manipulating the weather, then aren't they, isn't that manslaughter? The case could be made. So this is very dangerous stuff, and very sad for all of us. I know many of you have expressed that, and I agree with you. I think it's very sad. And so I think we're gonna continue to see more people. Unfortunately, we're gonna see more victims. And one of the other things that I heard about this that I thought was interesting, and yeah, this is basically a follow-up from last week. So we've already discussed this, but I'm grateful to see the National Guard out there. Excuse me, but one of the things that I heard from, and I didn't put the story up, but one of the discussions was that there were no trucks being allowed into Buffalo, so food would run out. Which, by the way, tells you the precarious nature of every city, every hyper dense um, uh, population center is very vulnerable. But it wasn't just that food could not be delivered in, so that would cause some shortages, but also food processing that would be coming out of Buffalo also was stopped. And so this is another thing that we're kind of watching is, are they manipulating that situation as well? And we know that there are those that, well, they're not your friends. And so we have to take it at face value. And unfortunately, it's not looking good. So again, another area, and if you've got friends and family up in that area, then I encourage you to pray for them. And again, I do think we're going to continue to see more and more relocations, if you will, yeah, in the upcoming season. I also wanted to share with you. I should have shared this a little bit earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and put it up on the screen now. And this is a report that is coming out. I think it's interesting that it comes as a new administration is coming into Israel. And so Iran is doing some serious saber rattling. I meant to share this with you before. Let me put this on the screen. They put out a video which essentially details or shows their designs essentially on simulating attacks on Tel Aviv. And they seem very determined to threaten and scare and cause terror. So they're not helping themselves in this conflict, because this is just going to cause trigger happy people to go ahead and pull the trigger, right? So this is going to be more problems again in this region. Look at this. Look at this. We will destroy their targets with great accuracy. And so fitting right into the narrative. And I believe that is in part, well, that's intentional, saints. This is part of the plan. And so, again, we're going to keep an eye on this theater of operations over the next, indefinitely, really. We are inside of 90 days for the new year. And there is a countdown clock on remnanthouse.org if you are interested in when the Zadok calendar calls the new year. And so, that reminds me, we do have a form on the front page of our website. Many of you have filled it out. If you'd like a calendar, please make sure you fill that out, because we need to have your address and information to send that out. So thank you. This was a interesting story that, again, back to that same theater of operations. And this is why we're keeping an eye on it, because when people start losing their lives, this takes it up a notch. And Moscow says Ukrainian rocket strike kills 63 Russian troops. This is the largest single attack that Russia has suffered. Ukrainian forces fired rockets at a facility in eastern Donetsk region where Russian soldiers were stationed, killing 63 of them, Russian Defense Ministry said Monday. So that's not coming from Ukraine. That's coming from Russia saying it is one of the deadliest attacks on the Kremlin's forces since the war began more than 10 months ago. Ukraine forces fired 6 rockets from HIMARS launch system, and 2 of them were shot down. A defense ministry statement said it did not say when the strike happened. So more and more of this saber rattling and more of this is going to continue, and we're going to keep an eye on it. But saints, I believe it's about to go crazy. I'm not alone in this. Even AI thinks so. Yeah, did you know they turned over a lot of things to AI? So isn't that kind of like Skynet? Did they really do this? And there's been a lot of discussion online about AI generated art. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's kind of becoming a rage now, is AI generated artwork. And this has been very interesting. The mind of the machine, chilling AI predicts what nuclear war would look like with attacks on London, Moscow, and Washington. And the depictions that are coming out, people are starting to ask those questions of AI. Why is that interesting? Well, because what do you think they're going to be using in any future war? So these are horrific images, and this is what the computer's best guesses are of the days ahead, right? So Eek. Look at that picture. Computer doesn't think we have a very good future. This is Washington, D.C. So I just thought I'd share that kind of a side note. AI making art. That's kind of an interesting thing, and we're seeing more and more of that coming in. Now, back to weather, one of the things that we saw happening, we saw the storms in the East Coast. I don't know if you're familiar. Those of you on the West Coast, of course, know that there is a massive, massive storm happening in California, and it has turned deadly as it slams California with flooding and mudslides. So another significant atmospheric river event drenched California this weekend, flooding homes and roads and forcing evacuations, claiming at least one life so far. And what I find interesting about this is that, of course, you know as well that that they had a drought problem, and so, oops, excuse me, sorry about that. They had a drought problem, and so let me back out of there. Close the wrong window. Anyway, they do, and now all of a sudden they have a water problem. So they went from one extreme to the other. And what I see every time I see that, whenever I see that occur, like it'll go from no rain to too much rain to know what to do with. I see, in my mind's eye, I see shaking back and forth, right? So he's shaking everything that can be shaken, going from one extreme to the other. That's what shaking is. Shaking is one extreme to the other, and it's hard. And so Northern California is definitely wet now. You got plenty of water now. Let's see if they can figure out what to do with it. I know that there were a couple of earthquakes there, and I was cautioned about the underground areas now filling up with water again. All these caverns got empty. All these aquifers got empty. Now all of a sudden they're being suddenly filled again. What could go wrong? So we're going to keep an eye out on California. I believe there's a lot coming there. And also, this is something we've talked about a few times, and I want to make sure that everybody is making plans accordingly, because utility bills are going crazy. And the U.S. Consumer Price Index rose 7.1% in November from a year ago, down from a 40-year high of 9.1% in June. But hot inflation continues to hit consumers hard. According to the National Energy Assistance Directors Association, roughly 20 million households in the U.S., 1 out of 6 homes, are behind on their utility bills. And folks, we're not talking small bills either. They're getting crazy amounts of money now for electricity, and it's probably going to get worse, because they are planning. They're doing some of this, I believe, on purpose, and so it is a very dangerous time. Power is going to be a big factor. I believe you need to have energy dominion. I've talked about that. We'll be talking about that more in the weeks to come. I believe you need to have alternative energy systems, and you have to find ways to augment your power. There are various ways that you can do that, and it is very important that we take that seriously, because lives will be at stake. So encourage you all to find solutions. We are certainly working very hard on our New Kingdom Energy program, and we encourage any of you, whether you're working with us or working with other suppliers or finding other solutions, we strongly encourage it. Even if all you have is a battery backup, even if all you have is something that's charged up just to keep you guys from being completely without power should that go down. So that is something that we just encourage everybody to do. All right. And then moving on, again, there's a lot here that we had to cover. I know you guys heard about this. We talked about the Twitter files. We talked about the revelation. So I didn't want to go over this heavily, but I did want to make a quick note that these things continue to get exposed. So now these details are coming out, and they reveal that the social media platform rigged the COVID debate, was complicit in deaths that could have been easily prevented. And so the information is starting to come out and it's damning information, that a lot of manipulation of what was presented to the public. They were guilty of manipulating that information. And so now the attention is flipping, And a lot of people are asking hard questions. So again, put that together with the Supreme Court case and some of the other elements, right? So again, one of the things that we like to do is try to zoom out and take a look at the overall macro picture, as opposed to just focusing on the individual things, and pay attention to that. Now, one good piece of news, and we'll kind of wrap on this point. Supreme Court did leave Trump era Title 42 in place. They prevented a full-blown border crisis. So this is a good sign coming from the Supreme Court that they did not play the game, which would have literally opened the floodgate on the southern border. If it isn't already a floodgate, it would have made it worse. And so that was a bit of good news to see that there are some sane heads that are saying, yeah, I don't think so. It's not a good idea. Now there's discussions about actually shoring up the border. And so there's a bit of a tide turning going on right now. And I believe that tide is turning because of the truth being revealed. And I believe it's because of the prayers of the saints who are demanding judgment and justice be returned to the earth. So if they in fact judge according to what that case, if they go ahead and execute, now I'm kind of 50-50 on whether they're going to do it or not, because it takes a lot of courage to do that. And I haven't seen a whole lot of courage so far. I've seen fake courage and the kind of courage, I mean, to do that move right there would be epic. It would be unforgettable, and it would change the world. But I believe it would also make the United States very vulnerable. So on the one good side of that, yay, there's a certain group of people that would be celebrating, all right, we got the dirty crooks, none of them can hold office anymore, and they're all going to be prosecuted. Well, that's great, except now you got empty halls. And that makes the United States, I believe, very vulnerable. I believe a leadership vacuum is a dangerous thing. And as much as I know many people are hoping that, lock them up, lock them all up, right? That has to be done with a bit of delicacy, because we have enemies, and the United States is hated. And so, this is a dangerous time for that to go down. And if in fact, again, it goes that way, if it goes to the right and they execute that or judge accordingly in that case, then we're going to see it in the street. We're going to see it in every area. And I believe it's going to affect the financial picture very heavily. We're going to talk more about next week. There are some things that I'm keeping an eye on and I wanted to talk about today, but I didn't get confirmations of them. So we're going to leave it for next week. But there's a lot happening right now behind the scenes. And if you remember, we went to the Hill in 2015 to press for your Jubilee. That's what we went to press. One of the major things we went to press for, and continue to press here on Holy Sacred Ground here at New Kingdom, to pray for your Jubilee. And we believe the Avenger of the Jubilee heard our prayer and is now bringing that to pass, which means you are going to get liberated. Now, that's the good news. Here's the bad news. You ready? This is why we need to do, and again, if not next week, it'll be one of the next broadcasts that we do. We're going to focus just on kind of the monetary element, because once they pull this off, in other words, if they free you, right? So a Jubilee is a boom, you're free. That means your debts are gone. They eliminate them, right? They stop using your Social Security and your birth certificate as chattel property. They free you. Okay, great. You're free. Hallelujah, right? We're excited. Do you think they're going to waste any time trying to re-ensnare? No, they're going to have a snare ready to go right then. In other words, you're free. Now sign up for this. And so that's what we need to be careful about, and we need to watch, because when that moment comes, that way of escape presents itself, we need to accept, take it, run with it, but we need to be careful not to re-entangle ourselves with whatever they come with next, right? So this is where it's going to get dicey. That's why we need to keep an eye on it. We need to look at it a little bit more critically than just to be like, oh, it's wonderful, you know. And I think that the euphoria can get can cause us to lower our guard and cause problems for us. So that's why we need to pay attention to this. I believe that's why one of the reasons why we're doing these weekly broadcasts is in that event. And should we see massive move there, then we need to know, you know, how to move from that point, because following the crowd will not be wise. Let's just put it like that. And so there's going to be some changes. I do believe that it's unavoidable. I believe that you're already seeing system crashes. You're already seeing systems that are not able to sustain the weight. Many markets have been seriously hit by these machinations. And so I don't believe we've got a lot of time before we're going to start to see the ripple effects of really terrible policies that were instituted. And look, they just did it again. Spent $1.7 trillion they don't even have on stuff that they got no business doing. I mean, crazy has gone to seed here. So we should expect to see more of that. And but inside of this, he always makes a way of escape, right? So he's going to make a way of escape for you. And if he's doing that for you, and if he's opening doors, you need to pray seriously about that. If he's pulling on your heart to partner with other people or connect up with a group or whatever, join in on that. That's wise. He's preserving you. Amen. There are no lone rangers. There's no tables for one at the wedding supper. Okay? No tables for one. So there's no loners. We need to come together. And this is part of the last days prophecies, is that we would be brought together. And I believe he is bringing people together in the spirit, in the ruach. We go to the same meetings in the ruach. That's why physically we might not be together. Some people will be, but it's about connection and being part of a community. So you can be a part of a community and be 500 miles away from that physically, but still be part of that community. That's important, though, that you have connection. And I believe that that's what he's doing now. And I want to encourage you to continue to pray for those that are awakening, not only to news things that are happening, but awakening, most importantly, to salvation. Because after all, what difference does it make if they escape some of these things and lose their souls? What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul? And so we know that the power structures and the information propaganda structures that were erected are falling. They cannot contend with alternative media. They can't contend with the popularity, which has been off the charts, of the alt media. And I don't see any end in sight unless they just pull the plug on the whole thing. And so just expect there to be more conflict, expect there to be greater difficulty and greater challenges going forward. And on that note, I believe I'm done for tonight. I want to thank you all for joining us. It's always a pleasure to see you. Oh, really? That's an interesting piece of information. Look at that. When I log into my student loan accounts, they have blank forms ready for the IRS. They will count forgiven student loan debt as income to be taxed. You gotta be kidding me. Wow. Well, I guess that makes some sense, right? Wow. Circle logic. It's kind of crazy. But we're going to see more of that. I think it's like trying to land a plane that's on fire. They're still negotiating because they can't come to grips with the reality that they're done. The king is coming. I mean, if you can see him, if you understand the way he takes a whip of small cords and goes through and whips, then you basically can see him. You can see him putting an end to a lot of things just by exposure. What did we say? We said the brightness of the king's coming, right? Even before he arrives, just his brightness, which is the Ruach Emet, the Ruach of truth. It's going to keep exposing liars and lies. And people that double down on them just make themselves look like, well, just the way they should look, like buffoons, right? Somebody said, the universe, they try to teach us that it's run by, protons, electrons, and neutrons, and they forgot about the morons. There's some truth to that. So I believe he's just going to continue to expose nonsense. He's going to continue to expose lies. They've told nothing but. And I believe that was one of their goals. Didn't the CIA director say at one point, we all know we were successful when everything the American people believe is a lie? So that tells you who they work for. And that's all being exposed. It's all coming out to light. It's not being exposed by us. We're just watching. But we're seeing it happen. We're seeing it manifest. We're seeing more and more people awakening. This is a result of the prayers of the remnant. He hears your prayer. I know that it is your prayer that is doing it, because he doesn't hear everybody. And he's very specific about that. But he hears you because you keep his word and you honor him. And he who say they love him and keep not his commandments are liars. So you are telling the truth. You keep his commandments. And that's why your prayers are coveted. This is why people call you, remnant, to pray for them. Okay? Because they know, isn't it funny? They make fun of you, but then they know who to call for prayer. Isn't that kind of interesting? So they're going to be coming more and more. You're going to see more and more people. Be gracious, saints. Don't hurt them. Don't hurt them when they're coming, because they know they need them. Amen. And I'm so grateful for every single one of you. We wouldn't be here without you. Thank you for your support. For those of you that are part of this house, you make everything we do happen, and we're so grateful for that. In the name of Yahuwah Elohim, we thank every one of you who have participated and helped us along the way. And as we await the return of Yahushua HaMashiach, the King of all glory, I know that he's going to continue to knit our hearts together more than ever. Thank you so much for joining us. May he bless each and every one of you. We'll see you again next time.